Cats, welcome back to another episode of Chat About That. I'm Bella.
And I'm Malik.
And in this episode, we're going to be chatting about our favorite and least favorite Star Wars films and TV shows. We really wanted to make an episode all about Star Wars for May the 4th. And so we're going to be chatting about our favorite and least favorite films and TV shows. And yes, we have a couple of loath cats you can see. They have infiltrated our home. We got one sleeping in the back, and then we have this little mischievous one right here. And then we got our droid right here to keep us company. And then in the back, there's a stormtrooper patrolling. But yeah, we wanted to bring out some of our Star Wars memorabilia while we chat about Star Wars. So yeah, for May the 4th, happy May the 4th. May the 4th be with you.
Beware Revenge of the 5th.
Yes.
And remember, this is the May.
Exactly. So yeah, we were thinking about what we wanted to do for May 4th, and we decided let's go over our favorite and least favorite films and TV shows. So we're going to spend most of the time talking about the films, but we're going to run through our list of least favorite to favorite. We're going to do that order so we can have our, reveal at the end. But we're going to do the TV series first, and then we'll go into more detail about the films. So Malik actually has, I think, 2 more shows on his list than I do because there's 2 main series that I haven't watched yet. So his list is going to be a little bit different than mine, but other than that, the list will have the same things. So let's start out with our least favorite TV series. Do you want to go first?
All right, so I put actually one of the ones that I think that was different from yours, Tales of the Jedi.
Okay, yeah, that I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, it was cool and cute and provided backstory for the characters, but it wasn't that groundbreaking, and if you didn't watch it, you're kind of not missing anything. So like a supplemental series, cool, but as a main series, you're not missing anything.
Yeah, I think that's why I didn't watch it yet. I think I watched like 1 episode because it is a supplemental series and it's not really, like you said, you're not missing anything by watching it. So that's why I haven't watched it. But maybe that'll be something I'll watch like on the plane or if I'm bored or something or have it on the background. But yeah, I wasn't like super interested in that series. And my least favorite show, which you're probably gonna be mad about, was actually Andor. And I know we said we weren't going to get into it, but I think for the least favorite ones, let's just talk a little bit about it. I like Andor, like the character, and I love Diego Luna, the actor who plays him. I think he's a phenomenal actor. I think like overall the series was really good, and I think the acting was good, set, all that stuff. But I just felt the story was kind of hard to follow for me. And I felt like it was a lot slower than the other series, so it was just a little bit hard for me to get into and invest in it because the story was just a little slow, and I personally just felt the plotline was difficult to understand. But Malik really liked it and didn't think that at all, and I've talked to some other people, and they've both said that they agreed with me, and I've had other people who said that it was really easy to follow. So maybe it's just something that I need to rewatch and like maybe try to like understand it more, but I just personally felt it was a little difficult to understand, so that's why I put it lower on the list. But I don't think it was a bad show. I don't think any of the shows are bad. It just, out of everything else that I've seen, it just was not my favorite. So then my second least favorite show was The Clone Wars. I think people are gonna be mad about that because I know that's like a really, really popular show, and again, none of these are bad shows, but not my favorite show. I think there was a lot of like filler in it, and I think they could have kind of condensed it down to more of the story. So yeah, that just wasn't one of my favorites. What was yours?
So my second least favorite was the Obi-Wan show, and I know that's spicy because I love Obi-Wan as a character, but the show just, I think they bit off on too many additional characters.
Yeah, I agree.
And I mean, Obi-Wan, he has such a rich history in and of himself, and I feel like he got lost in the sauce in his own show. I'm like, okay, it was focusing on so many other characters. I was like, it let me down, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, I didn't put that one's low on my list. It's higher than yours. But yeah, I think they try to do too many things with it. And I wish they would have kind of just stuck with like the Inquisitor plot line. And as much as I obviously love Princess Leia, she's on my shirt, I don't really feel like putting her in the show was necessary for like the first season. And unfortunately, I do think this whole series is canceled. I don't think they're doing anything else. So I just wish they would have stuck let's do the Inquisitor plotline for the whole season, and then maybe for the second season they could have added the Princess Leia plotline, and I think that would have been really cool. But I think trying to like incorporate all of it in one season was a little it just made it like too jumbled. But I do love the last episode with Anakin and him doing the face off. I think that was really phenomenal. That scene was just beautifully shot. But yeah, that one, we'll get to when that one is, but that wasn't my second least favorite slot. My third least favorite slot is going to go to the Bad Batch. Again, people are going to be really mad about this, but I just like, I don't really care care much about the clones. Like, they're not really my favorites. And we're watching the last season right now. I think there's 4 seasons, right?
I think they're
3 seasons? Yeah. Oh, so far. Rebels had 4 seasons. Yeah, so we're on like the last season right now, and it's just really slow. And I just like it. I like it. I enjoy it, but it's not my favorite show. So that one's my third least favorite. What about you?
So my third least favorite, and another one in addition to your list, was Visions.
Okay,
and I put it down. I really love this show as a standalone show. Again, it's a really good supplement. It's down lower because, again, if you don't watch it, you're not missing anything from the main storyline. But I put it higher than Obi-Wan because the art styles are very cool, and it focuses on each episode is its own standalone story with its own standalone characters, but it helps make the universe feel so much bigger, which I appreciated.
Yeah, I watched a couple of episodes with you. Yeah, of the episodes I saw, I liked the art style, but I thought, like, other than that, it wasn't really, like, anything, like, super special. My next slot is Obi-Wan, so pretty close to where you put yours. Same points stand from earlier. What about you?
Yeah, so my next was the Bad Batch. Actually,
okay.
And for similar reasons as yours, just because it's focusing on such a small group of individuals. There's really nothing impactful to the overarching story, or really anything we haven't even heard much, because we knew there were experiments going on with the clones and the Kaminoans and all that. So it's cool to get into the details of that, but again, it's not really adding a whole lot out else. I will say the characters themselves, like the Bad Batch themselves, are a fun lot of characters.
Yeah.
And Omega's cool, and the animation is really great.
Yeah, I do love the animation.
It's really cool to see just how, again, the quality and technology has improved since the Clone Wars and such like that.
And then I think now we're getting into the top 4, at least for me. And so this was hard. My top 4 was difficult because I'm kind of flipped on my 4th and 3rd slot. So I did put, and a lot of people are going to be mad at me, but I did put Ahsoka as number 4. But it's more because the show that I'm like thinking about putting, I know, Lothcat. The show that I was like debating with, I don't know, there was more like memeability with it, which made me enjoy it a little bit more. But I loved Ahsoka. I don't think this is a bad show. Everything in my top 4 is like my favorites out of all of these, obviously. But it was just hard for me to put Ahsoka and then the other one after that. But I loved the Ahsoka show. I think it was phenomenal. I also think if you didn't watch Star Wars Rebels, which is a TV series, and you'll see where I ranked that in a minute, you're going to be very confused, I think. So that's kind of like another reason why I put it a little bit lower, just because you do need a lot of the lore. It's very like Rebels 2.0 kind of thing. But I think that show was so wonderful. We actually met the actress who plays Sabine on that show. Her name's Natasha in real life. She was super, super, super sweet.
We met Ahsoka too. Rosario
oh, we did. We also met Rosario Dawson. Oh my god, we
met
literally did. We have a photo op with her as well. So we did meet both of them this year. Yeah, I think is more like you have to understand like a lot of different lore, especially that's kind of something that's like Star Wars, not that it's Star Wars adjacent, but it's not within like Rebels is not a series that's within like the main series. So it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like Star Wars Rebels, we'll get into it, but I feel like most people like haven't really seen Star Wars Rebels, or more like casual fans probably haven't seen it. So I think it was like a little bit harder for other people to understand. But I loved Ahsoka. I don't, just because I put it in that slot doesn't mean I didn't like it. I absolutely loved that show, and I'm really excited for the next season. What was in that slot for you?
My next one, so I have a top 1, 2, 3, 6 because I had the 2 additional.
Yes, you do.
So my next one is Andor. And
Okay.
I put it lower down just because, I mean, I'll get into the reasons why I put ones above it in a minute. But I really enjoyed it. I really like, just getting into, like, how it affected everyday people, how the politics were played. I mean, as a federal employee, I can definitely relate to the bureaucracy in many episodes. And some of the episodes, The Eye. I keep talking about it.
That
and
episode
telling you,
was really nice.
It's probably one of the best episodes of any sci-fi series on television I've ever seen. I mean, the composition and the visuals. There are some. I think I watched it by myself for the first time. You were on a trip or something, and there were several scenes where I was just like, "Oh my god!" Like there was one scene in particular I said out loud, "I'm like, this is beautiful." I mean,
it was that episode was really nice.
The use of silhouettes and everything, just oh my god. So, but again, like adding to the overall story, maybe not a whole lot there. And again, one season of this series, so maybe they'll make more in the future. But I really enjoy it.
Then my next one that I was like flip-flopping between, and a lot of people are gonna be like, seriously, I put the Book of Boba Fett. Now, generally speaking, people did not really like this show, but I really loved it, and this is what I was talking about, like the memeability. There were so many, at least to me and to Malik, there were a lot of parts in this show that were kind of like memeable. And just like, I don't know, I just like Boba Fett, and I liked that they continued with his story. And yes, it was kind of like Mando season 2.5, but I didn't mind that, and I just really like Boba Fett, and I liked where they like were kind of bringing his character, and I thought like the whole plot line with him and like the Tusken Raiders and him like rescuing Fennec and all that, like I just really enjoyed it. So I put that one just one above Ahsoka, but I would probably say I liked them both equally the same.
My next one was actually the Clone Wars.
Okay.
I put that one pretty high because there's a lot of filler and you gotta slog through some of it, but it is really important to the story, and I can't tell you how many times like before I watched it and even afterward, you'll be talking with people and they'll be like, wait, when did that happen? Oh, it happened in the Clone Wars. It's like you didn't see the Clone Wars? It's like, I feel like that is said a lot. And so I feel like if you didn't watch the Clone Wars, there's going to be a lot of just little, I can't say subtle because it is main storyline and it's dealing with like Obi-Wan and Anakin and them. So there are important story beats in Clone Wars. So again, it's tough to make it through, but it is very important to understanding, I think, the kind of future post Clone Wars era, for lack of better terms, of Star Wars. I think it helped. I mean, it helps explain what happened to Ahsoka.
Yeah.
It actually, I think, helps even flesh out more of Anakin's story about.
Definitely.
It was like, at the end of episode 3, it's like he's suddenly bad. It's like, well, okay, there's more context. But that's why I put it so high.
So this is my top 2, so I'm gonna let him go through the rest of his list and stop at his top 2 so we can do the top 2 together. So continue on until you get to your top 2.
Okay, my next one above the Clone Wars was the Ahsoka show.
Okay.
And I put it higher because, again, it deals with important characters, very cool, serious themes, I think. And also, I mean, not to harp on Clone Wars again, very digestible. It was very to the point. There's not a lot of filler episodes, and so I will hold that against Clone Wars.
I would say like 40% of the Clone Wars is just filler episodes.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I personally put it low down on the list, because even though like Obi-Wan wasn't the greatest show, it had like a consistent plot line, even though it got a little like confusing every now and then. But I think the Clone Wars, there's so much of it that's just not necessary. And there's so many seasons, I think they really could have just condensed it.
Yeah, and I mean, to its credit, the last 2 seasons, I think the Clone Wars were when it really hit its stride.
Yeah, they were really good.
The final season, they did really get into it. So if you're going to start the Clone Wars, if you never watched it, I would recommend finding a list online. I'm sure, nerds put together so many of them. The important episodes, and definitely at least sit out the last 2 seasons. That's definitely worth it. That's where they actually, get condensed and get to the point, which is good and important. Above Ahsoka, like you, I put Book of Boba Fett.
Okay.
I love Boba Fett and his character and how they also cleverly tied it, I think, into other series, which I think is smart writing just in any, series or franchise. I think that's cool when they do that. The pin in that, I do. Disney, please. I know you never will. Please make an R-rated Boba Fett movie. Come on, getting into his backstory. he deserves that. I mean, his backstory's messed up, and he's such a cool character that I think he deserves, a little bit something with a little more bite, to get into the very dark themes as to what made his character the way he was actually through the Clone Wars. But again, like I don't think people are like, oh, they made him like a big softie in his show. That's fine. It's like get into his backstory. Maybe it's like, okay, maybe he just wanted to take a load off and sit in the canteen and drink a beer. He deserves it, damn it. So I don't mind them going, softening him a little bit at all. Not that he's soft by any means.
No,
he
no.
blasting people left and right. So, second favorite, Rebels.
So you said, so you're at your top 2 now?
Yeah.
So your second favorite is Rebels.
Yep.
Okay, so our favorite, and our 2 top favorites are exactly the same.
Oh, yeah.
My second favorite TV series is also Rebels. You go to it?
Yeah, I feel like they took some lessons learned from the Clone Wars and condensed it significantly.
Yes.
4 seasons as opposed to however many Clone Wars had. I don't even remember. A few filler episodes, but not to the point where it was a pain.
Distracting or anything.
Yeah, and the characters are really cool. The crew of the Ghost, awesome. I mean, they got Sabine. They really get into the Mandalorian stuff, which weird. I might be biased.
Yeah, you might like Mandalorian.
Yeah, shout out to the Mercs. And also, I mean, like the big bad, like how they handled Thrawn at the end, and he's also really reaching into like. I'm not even this hardcore, but like the books and the comics in that series. I mean, he was such a significant character. I mean, even in historical, for lack of better terms, Star Wars media, that it was really cool to see them bring him in, and they handled him so well in the show. And it was also, they brought in like Bo-Katan and other legacy characters, and those cool. Wedge Antilles is in there. They kind of get into his backstory a little bit. He's a kind of not a main character. He's a side character, at some point. So again, really, really handled well, and a really good balance of serious story beats, but also it's an animated show, so it's fun and entertaining to watch. So I think they really struck a good balance with that one.
Yeah, I have to agree with Malik. That's why I put it as the top 2, because I think, like you said, it's more condensed. There's less filler. All of the characters are really interesting. They also introduced the Loth Cats. I'm not sure if they were in anything live. Not live action. I'm not sure if they were in anything like prior to Rebels. Were they on Clone Wars maybe?
I don't remember. They might have had Tukas, which are basically.
They did. I think they had Tukas, but I think they introduced the Loth Cats. Obviously, we love Loth Cats over here. But yeah, they introduced Loth Cats, and I just love the characters. I love Hera. I love Kanan. They also have a lot with like the Jedi. They talk a lot about like Order 66 and sort of the aftermath of like the Jedi and like why Darth Maul is in it. It's not like why is Darth Maul in it? Like everything makes sense. And it's really like if you're like a rebel, like within Star Wars, like obviously again I love Princess Leia. I am all here for the rebels. It's really cool because you're seeing more of that like behind the scenes, what they were really doing and like what was at stake to stop the Empire. So I adore Rebels in both categories. And then our top favorite, you can probably guess it, we've already talked about it on this show before, is The Mandalorian. Right. I don't know how much we have to go into detail because we did a full recap of season 3 already and already talked about how much we love it, but just my opinion, personally, but I just think this is the best Disney Plus show, to be honest. I think this, other than WandaVision, WandaVision was phenomenal, but I think this is one of the best Disney Plus shows, and it's definitely the best Star Wars show. I think they just took this really interesting concept and just ran with it. They're going into so much detail about the Mandalorians in general and, at the aftermath of, like, the Purge. And then, obviously, everyone loves Grogu. And I'm not just saying it's my favorite show because I love Grogu, but that does help. But I just think it's such a well-thought-out show. The way that they film it is beautiful. It's just so clever, and it's also, like, funny, too. Like, Rebels is very funny as well. But there's, like, funny elements to The Mandalorian. It doesn't take itself too seriously. And I just think it's such a phenomenal show. And I actually met Carl Weathers. I think it was, like, last year or the year before I actually met him, and he recently passed away. He was very, very nice. But it's just phenomenal show. What do you?
Yeah, they really struck gold. They knew what they were doing when they made it. And also, we were talking about this the other day. They they kind of spanned both worlds with like the cool like badass warrior bounty hunter thing, and then like the cute aspects with Grogu and all that. They have like the gunslinging kind of Western aspects of it, the fun sci-fi elements, and like I said, it doesn't take itself too seriously. I mean, there's funny moments between Din and Grogu, and also they still they connect it to the greater story. I mean, Luke makes it in, and it's not like, oh, what's he doing here? It's like, oh, like he's. Should I mention spoilers? I mean, it's been out for years at this point.
It's fine, yeah.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
Spoilers. Like, if you haven't watched Mandalorian, what are you doing? Yeah, Luke comes in, like, to train this kid. There's still the mystery where Grogu came from and his species, and that Ahsoka's in it a few times. I mean, it's really well done. I can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, we both agree. Yeah, that was our list of the TV shows. I know we said we weren't going to go into it much, but, it is what it is. We're nerds. We don't talk about it. So getting into the movies. So we're going to be doing episodes 1 through 9, and then Clone Wars, Rogue One, and Solo as well. So those are the films that we were going to be ranking. I'm very interested to see how many of these are similar. I think our least favorite is going to be both of us. My least favorite film is the Clone Wars movie. Is that yours too? Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
So the Clone Wars movie came out a couple of months before the Clone Wars TV series did. I cannot remember what exact year that was.
2008?
Yeah, it was like early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it came out, like I said, a couple of months before the show, and we watched it the other day, actually, because we were gonna make this list and we hadn't seen it. It's basically just a really long extended episode of the Clone Wars, and this movie was in the theaters. So if you watch it, it's on Disney Plus. I don't even want to give it time to speak about it because it was so bad. But it's basically just a super long episode of the Clone Wars.
It's like an anthology. It could have been broken into 3 TV episodes, which is what it feels like.
It's just so bad, and
yeah,
it's basically like a long filler episode.
Yeah, the story isn't even vaguely important.
No, it's very it's not even it doesn't really even have anything to do with the Clone Wars.
It introduces Ahsoka,
but then they introduce her in the
so it's not even
there's really no, it was unnecessary.
Yeah,
it was an unnecessary movie. So I don't even want to talk about it enough. Okay, what was your second least favorite movie?
Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. And all I'm gonna say,
that one is way higher up on the list
really?
than mine. Okay. And
I hate to put it down so low, but I still can't get over. Somehow Palpatine is back. That just the effects and everything are cool. Obviously big budget. I like seeing the final battle, but I hit the other I hold this against The Last Jedi, too. The infighting between the directors hurt so much of it for me, but that line just summed it up. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It's my least favorite of the sequel series, I will say. And it's not, super high up on my list. We'll get to it eventually, but it is my least favorite of that series.
Yeah, and in addition, I mean, I'm not going to... People have made hours-long rants about this on YouTube, so I'm not going to do that. But just the whole, bringing Palpatine back and everything made the universe so small. It's they worked so hard to expand it, and they're so... I mean, again...
They're still going back to the same stuff.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, and then the thing that pissed me off about it, and once we talk more about the sequel series, I will talk about it a little bit more. But I really have a soft spot for that sequel series. But the thing that really pissed me off with that movie was Rey and Kylo Ren having a thing, because I'm where the hell was that the entire time? And that just really rubbed me the wrong way. And then the Palpatine thing was weird, but that one it's not as low as yours on my list, but it's the lowest of those sequel series. So I do agree with you on that. Mm-hmm. But there are plenty of movies that I didn't like more than that one. Okay. Yeah. What about your third least favorite?
Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
That's my second least favorite.
Yeah,
so.
no, I might have moved it down lower, but damn it, it gave us Duel of the Fates, and that shit slaps.
Yeah, that does slap. But yeah, that's my second least favorite as well. I
and
think
the part when Darth Maul just flat ass ran over that kid and his spear just bowled him over. Like,
oh my god, yeah.
Good for him all.
Episode 1, besides the Clone Wars movie, which I wish I could scrub from my brain, episode 1 is, in my opinion, other than the Clone Wars, the worst Star Wars movie ever. I won't even give like the Clone Wars like whatever. We're done talking about that one. It is so bad. Okay, and I know people who think that the Force Awakens, I've literally met people that think the Force Awakens is worse than the Phantom Menace. That's your opinion, bro. Like, you can go and think that. My opinion is that the Phantom Menace is awful. I just think, like, the way that it was made, it's just very odd. And it was made at a time where, like, CGI and live action did not mesh well together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was in the era, like, it was like pre-Avatar. So I feel like a lot of live action and CGI stuff like just was kind of Uncanny Valley-esque around that era. So like some of like the way that like Jar Jar and some of the other people look, it looks like video game quality. And like obviously back then it was probably phenomenal, but like I just don't feel like it holds up. I don't think the story is that good. I just like
on the story, the midichlorians.
The midichlorians? What the hell is that? And they don't they literally don't even say midichlorians anymore. Like they say M count. That's what they say because it's so stupid. And then they spend way too much time pod racing. We could do a whole episode. We could do a whole episode on this movie because it's so bad.
Duel of the Fates was probably the highlight. Yeah. Like I won't hold the Uncanny Valley, like I won't hold the tech against it, but still, like I said, like the story and stuff, it was just like okay.
It just that Uncanny Valleyness just adds to why it's bad.
It doesn't help.
It doesn't help the cause. Like if the animation was not terrible, I could maybe like watch it as a joke, but like everything about it is just bad. So I just can't watch it. Anyway, that was my second slot. My third least favorite was because we were just on your third least favorite. My third least favorite is the Solo movie. Where is that?
Oh, that's my fourth. List.
Okay, so we're like pretty close on a lot of these. The Solo movie, I will say, I think that they made an attempt to do these like younger versions of Han and Luke and Leia. Yeah. I will give them the credit because I do think it's interesting that we got Han's backstory, and I know he probably is in like the books and the comics, which we don't read. We don't have time for that. I can barely read the Kindle book that I've had for like 2 years. Okay, like I haven't finished it. I got it like 2 years ago, so I don't have time for all that. But I like that we could see his backstory. I think the actor that they hired for him was a really good choice. I actually really like that actor. I can't remember his name, but I've seen a lot of stuff that he's been in. I think he's a really good actor. I just think the story wasn't really that good. I think they added too many new people into it. Like, I kind of wish they would have just stuck with, like, his friend, like, that girl that he liked. Mm-hmm. I can't remember her name. They should kind of would have stuck with her a little bit more.
Maybe it would have been better as a limited series and just called it, like, Young Han or something.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be like, oh, it should have been a series. And then meanwhile, I'm over here like, oh, the Obi-Wan series was disappointing. Well, no, I feel like the Obi-Wan series, like, went way out of its league. But if they just made, like, a short series, like, The Adventures of Han or Young Han, and each one was, like, an episodic thing. Like, I feel like making it into a movie was like, oh, it's going to be, like, this big groundbreaking thing. And it was just kind of, like...
Yeah, I think a lot of people also were not receptive to it because I'm going to say it. A lot of the Star Wars fans are a lot older, and they're very against anything that's not the original trilogy. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people were put off that it's not Harrison Ford, which obviously they're not going to hire him to play young Han. Harrison Ford is old. I love you, Harrison Ford, but you ain't playing young Han. He old. He's not. He didn't even want to come back in the other series. That's why they, like, killed him off. And he actually wanted to get killed off in the original series. And they were going to kill him off when they put him in the carbonite. But then they were like, no, you're coming back. Like, he literally Anyway, I will say that Donald Glover playing Lando, was the best part of that entire movie. He played, like, he played Lando exactly the way that Billy D. Williams did, and it was like so good. Like if they did a Lando movie with Donald Glover, that would have been so amazing. But I do think that the Lando, like, that was phenomenal. So I kind of just wish they would have like stuck with Han, Lando, and then I cannot remember the character's name.
It'll come to me.
She's played by Emilia Clarke, that character. I wish they would have just stuck with like the three of them. I think him like joining and like trying to like fight against that like weird group of people. It was too much crap. It was kind of like the Andor series, or not the Andor series. It was kind of like the Obi-Wan series, where there was just like too much stuff happening.
And to the credit of the Obi-Wan series, at least the characters and like the Inquisitors and stuff they introduced, they've been mentioned before,
and they were in Rebels heavily.
Yeah. Whereas with Han, there's all these
random
important things. Like,
that
it's a movie. It's important. Well, Han never mentioned it.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
It's like, you can't really retcon that in movies that came out decades ago.
Yeah. There was just a lot of unnecessary things in it. But I will also say I loved the plot line with, like, Chewbacca, and I love that they, like, explained how they met, and that, like, you know, Chewbacca has, like, a life debt to Han, and then that, like, showed, like, why he does. So I will say there were some good parts of that movie, and I don't think it's, like, the worst movie I've ever seen. I just think, obviously, if we're ranking just Star Wars, it's low on the list, but it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. You know, I would probably rewatch it. I've rewatched it a few times, but
I feel like I should rewatch it. It's been a while.
It's low on the Star Wars ranking, but it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. So that was your fourth. That was my third. So my fourth is actually episode 2.
Oh, that is my next one.
Oh, okay. So we're like one behind.
Yeah.
Okay. So episode 2 is my is the next one. It's my fourth. His fifth. Again, I just think the prequels. I don't like the prequels. I don't really like them. And I just that movie just. I don't. Why don't you explain it? Because I just don't like them. That's like the reason why I have them low. I don't like them.
Yeah, I mean, even of the original, or not the original, the prequels, with the original important characters like Anakin and all that. Like, just trying to think of what happened in the movie. I don't really come up with a whole lot. I remember the arena.
Convoluted.
Yeah, the arena, and that's kind
of.
You
had to remind me about that.
Nothing really otherwise important happens.
We rewatched it.
That they continue on with it. Like,
well, also the like the whole part with like the clones, like obviously.
Yeah, the Clone Wars starts, but then they like in the movies themselves until the series came out, it wasn't even important. So it's like, why would you bring up this crazy important thing that in the next movie you barely even address?
Yeah, that was the only thing I remembered about it was when they go to Kamino and they meet like Boba Fett and Jango Fett. That was the only thing about that movie that I remembered. And we rewatched the prequels like a month ago, and we had also watched the prequels like maybe last year around this time. And it wasn't even like, it was probably a year since we had watched them, and I barely remembered what happened because it's just but I put them low because I just don't like the prequels, but also I agree with you.
Lightsaber duels though in the prequels, they were great.
I like the cinematography and like that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's great, but just like overall, like it was not my favorite. So my fifth from the bottom, is probably higher up on your list, is episode 3. Is episode 3 for you really high up?
Yep.
Yeah, I know you really like episode 3. Again, I just don't like the prequels. And I will say the last, like, 30 minutes of episode 3, when he goes to, Mustafar. I always get Mustafar and Dathomir confused. When they go to Mustafar, like, from that point through the end, phenomenal.
Yeah, that shit goes hard.
Beautiful. Literally chef's kiss. Love that. But everything before that, I don't really like. I also think it was kind of convoluted. I think it's very contradictory with the Clone Wars, which came out after the Clone Wars TV series came out after the prequels came out, and there's a lot of stuff that I think is contradictory. Because like one of the whole like reasons why Anakin is so mad is because they won't make him like a Jedi Master, but then he has a Padawan, and I know that this is more of me shitting on the Clone Wars TV show than me shitting on the prequels, but, like, let me just say what I want to say. He has Ahsoka. Like, Ahsoka says Padawan, but the whole thing is, like, you can't have a Padawan unless you're, like, a Jedi Master or you're, like, higher up in the ranks, and, like, they wouldn't put him higher up in the ranks or whatever. And then, like, it just is very like, it's a very different like shift from, I'm like getting too excited and hitting the microphone. It's a very different shift from where he was in episode 2 through episode 3. I think it's very just like, the jump is there. But I will say the last like 30 minutes or whatever, like from that point on, is really, really, really good. And I think it's like him becoming Darth Vader and like Padme like dying and all of that. It's just like that whole sequence of it is so good. But the rest of the movie, I just think it's forgettable. And I just don't like the prequels. But you can talk about why you like it when you get higher up on the list. So the one above that is episode 9, which you already said that you didn't like. And I just put it above the prequels and Solo and the Clone Wars, just because I prefer the sequel series over the prequel series. And I just like the characters more. And even though the plot, like you mentioned, was kind of like weird and all that, and I kind of do agree with a lot of your points. I just think like overall, I think the movies are made better, and I understand that like as time goes on, Disney has more budget and all that. I'm not talking about that. I just think like overall, they're just better. Like it's just better made. I think the quality of like the acting and everything is like a lot better. I think just like, I don't know. I think the characters are more interesting. And I know that's like hard to say because like the prequels are like setting up the entirety of the universe. And I know that's kind of like contradictory for me to say that, but like I just prefer like Rey and Poe and Finn, and like I just prefer watching those characters in Kylo Ren over like watching like angsty Anakin. Like
Yeah.
So that's just why I put it higher than the prequels. And I also just, like I mentioned a million times, and I will not say it again, I hate the prequels. So that's why I put it there.
So mine was episode 8, The Last Jedi.
Oh.
Yeah, again,
I put that one... Oh, that's actually next. Okay, so I put 8, the next one. We can't do math, we're getting confused, but 8, my episode 8 is one higher on the list than where yours is. So... why don't you go?
So again, kind of what I said about Rise of Skywalker, just the infighting between the directors, just sullied it. You could tell where they were just things they set up in episode 7, like they just completely glossed over or like 180'd, and I'm like, I thought, people have opinions, but I feel like the direction they were taking Luke in with being like sort of evil and stuff, I was like, I don't know. I was like, I get it, but also, I don't know. I wasn't jazzed about it.
Again, because I have a soft spot for the sequel series, I liked that one. But it is, it's my second. I actually like the prequel series in the order that they were released, like episode 7, 8, then 9. That's my like ranking of like those series. So that one is, around the same where you put it. But yeah, I mean, I think I put it lower on the list, even though I genuinely liked the movie. I actually really liked that movie. I'm like the only person that likes these movies. But I just put it lower down on my list personally because of where I'm gonna rank all the other ones. But yeah, I think like I do agree with some of your points. I think like the direction of Luke was a little bit jarring, but I also think with the new series, like by the end of, again, spoilers if these movies have been out forever, by the end of the sequel series, by the end of Rise of Skywalker, the original characters are all dead, other than Lando. Obviously Lando's gonna survive. He probably has like, potions and stuff he's like taking to keep him alive forever. But Han, Luke, and Leia, they're all dead by the end. So I think the whole like difference of like Luke's behavior is kind of like being like he's passing the torch on to Rey. Like he doesn't want to be involved with this anymore. And then Han gets killed in the first one. He dies in the second one, and then Leia is the last one, and she passes away in the third one. So I think that kind of like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not training you. I'm all angry, is kind of like a way for like the series to like pass the torch on to the other people. But yeah, I mean, I do agree with like some of your points. So what's your sixth one in your sixth spot? Because that was my sixth spot.
Oh, I put Rogue One, which I think is one of your favorites.
That's one of my favorites. Okay.
Yeah, it's like again, I don't actively dislike it. I thought it was really cool. I mean, focusing on ordinary people and darker and grimmer, which we don't see very often, which I very much appreciate. But again, it's like I almost feel like it could have been a miniseries. Again, like back in the day, like movies were the big thing. Now I feel like series are more the hot thing. Looking back at it, it said like apart from the final parts of the movie, it's like I really don't remember much. It's like not like I mean I remember enjoying it, but nothing really sticks out to me. So
yeah, I loved that one. That's in my top 5. So I'll go into why I like it when we get to that. So now we're going to be getting into our top 5 favorite of the Star Wars. So mine in the 5th spot will be Episode 4, A New Hope. And I put that one in my 5th spot just because of all the ones that we have left. I think it's like the slowest of all of them. And I think it's just, obviously it's setting up the entirety of Star Wars. For those of you who are living under a rock, Episode 4, 5, and 6 were the first Star Wars movies that were released. And then, trilogy. Yes, it's the original trilogy, and then they released Episode 1 through 3. The
prequels.
So, which are the prequels, which we've just... I'll stop talking about them. So on my 5th spot will be Episode 4. And like I said, yeah, it's just a little bit slow. There's a lot of setup, obviously, but I don't think it's a bad movie. It's I love that movie. Obviously, it's in my top 5. But yeah, that's why I put A New Hope a little bit lower, just because it takes a little bit to get into it. So what is your 5th?
My 5th was The Force Awakens.
Okay.
So Episode 7. Not that I dislike it, but I liked it a lot. I think it did a really good job of bringing back memorable characters and nostalgia and stuff like that too. I think intentionally hooking older audiences and folks who like the legacy content and characters, and introducing the new series as well. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I just actually rewatched that movie the other day, and I just, as much as I liked the sequel series more than the prequels, I think they had such potential with the sequel series because The Force Awakens was so good. And then I don't know where it, went off the rails. I think,
the directors.
I think, well, yes, but I think, the first, half of episode... Oh my god, episode 8.
Yep, Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. I think the first half of that is good, and then I think it starts to get kind of confusing, and then it just goes off the rails. But I love The Force Awakens, so we'll get to that when I get to it. But my 4th spot is Rogue One, which I know you had lower. I just really, really enjoyed this movie. I don't know if it's more of just when I went and saw it, I just didn't really know what to expect. Obviously, I knew it was about, them getting the plans for, the Death Star and stuff. I think a lot of people kind of just write that movie off because, other than Andor, obviously, there's, a TV show about him, which takes place before Rogue One, if you've seen Rogue One, what happens at the end. I think a lot of people just kind of wrote it off because it was just sort of, a one-off movie, and, none of the quote-unquote, none of the characters are important.
Because they got.
Yeah, because, spoiler alert, they all, most of the characters, die in the end.
Which is a very important story.
Which is super important, yeah. But I just really loved the story. I really liked the character, her name's Jyn Erso. I really liked her. I liked Andor. I just thought, again, it's kind of where, the story of, Rebels comes in. It's, all these people, doing anything they can to stop the Empire. And it's, this movie really takes, Rebels, the show, and shows you exactly what happens when you put everything that you have into a cause, not into a cause, but into the cause of stopping the Empire, and the risks that you'll take, and just the consequences that you have to face because of the greater good. And I really, really loved that movie.
That's good you compared it to Rebels too.
Yeah,
it helps solidify the Empire as the villain.
Yes.
Too, as opposed to, okay, they have pointy ships and stormtroopers. Why are they so bad?
Yeah,
it's really, actually seeing them, beefing with the civilians and ordinary people. It's okay, it's these guys are bad.
And the main character, Jyn Erso, her father, Galen Erso, is in the Empire. He's an Imperial officer, I believe.
Yeah,
and he is the person who made the plans for the Death Star, and so that's why she's able to like go and figure out like, because he basically put like a flaw in the system and it's what like Luke shoots, like he goes in a little thing and like shoots it, and they're like, oh, there's a just happens to be something in the Death Star that'll blow it up. Like this movie explains that, and I think it's just an interesting point to show that like just because somebody was like an Imperial officer or was with the Empire doesn't mean that they're always like that, and like he went against them, and there's a lot of that element and plot in the Rebels as well. A lot of like the Imperials like realizing that they don't want to like do this anymore, and I liked that they kind of showed that, because when you see all of these officers and you see all the people in the Empire, they're just like, oh, all of them are bad, but that really showed that like, no, there are people that are like, oh wait, I didn't want to do this kind of thing. So I really like the story. I thought it was a really good film.
It's better character writing, more complex, gives motives, gives actual goals of characters. I think when you said people write it off too, I think this is me hypothesizing. Maybe they do that because it was kind of when they started doing a Star Wars story thing, and they called both Rogue One and Solo a Star Wars story. So I think people lump those two together, and what they don't like about Solo, for example, they're kind of like, oh, well, Rogue One is just a story too. It's like...
Yeah, and I also think maybe when people see that title, maybe they're like, they don't think it's like really important, but this movie really does, like, it's a supplemental part of the main story, but it's like telling such an important part of the main story. So that's why I put that as my fourth spot. Okay, so what is your fourth spot?
Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi.
Finale of the original trilogy.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about that one? Because that one is a little bit higher on mine.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah. So episode 6 is in your fourth spot.
Yeah, it's the lowest of my original trilogy, which, I mean, the rest of them are in the top spots for me. But I don't know, it's like, I feel like the first two were so impactful for me. It was kind of like, okay, we're doing similar themes, similar stuff, Death Star 2.0, like, where did that come from? Where did they get it? It's like, but I will say the final battles between that and the ground battles was very cool to see the extent of the carnage, for lack of better terms, and everyone fighting on all fronts, literally. So I did enjoy that.
Okay, that one is very different on my list. So, so top 3 now. We're into top 3.
Yeah.
So my third spot is A Force Awakens, because I love that movie. Again, I've already talked about how much I love these movies, but I just think that was such a great setup for, which unfortunately was like, we've already talked about it. The series didn't really end up panning out the way that we all wanted it to, but I think this movie just like, it was so like different, and like because they were all new characters, like obviously like Princess Leia was in it, Han and Chewbacca and like those people, but like because the characters were different and we're seeing the series starts like way after the last, like the trilogy ends, like this is like years later, and like it's kind of like establishing like, oh, they beat the Empire, this is great, oh wait, now their First Order is here, and like I just think it's very interesting. I love the characters, like I've already mentioned. It just like I just really, really love that movie. And I already like talked about how much I like the new ones over the prequels. But yeah, that's why I would put it a little bit over A New Hope, just because again, I think A New Hope, it was just a little slow for me. And this movie has like a lot more action and gets right into it. So that's why I would rank it a little bit higher. So what is your top 3?
My top 3 was episode 3.
So why don't you go into why you like that? Because I ranked that super low on my list.
Yeah, we had a couple of them like really swapped. I put that one so high because, again, I mean, the beginning part of it is pretty slow and there's some filler. It's like, okay, but I feel like it is kind of setting up some seedy stuff, with Palpatine. Oh, he's Star Sidious. Oh my gosh, who could have guessed? Setting, Anakin up for going on the dark side, and then once all that started going on, it was like very important. So I think for me, it got more serious earlier on in the movie than it did for you. I feel like any interaction Anakin had with them, it was like, okay, this is like, pay attention kind of a thing. And also I feel like, just as you talked about how the origin of Darth Vader and all that was important, so I won't repeat that, but just as the character, I mean, people who don't know anything about Star Wars know Darth Vader. He's had such an impact on just pop culture as a whole. I think just having the origin story and done so well is really important to the series as a whole and the media as a whole, and how the series itself, these the movies themselves, even the series, him showing up in Rebels. I mean, they kind of spoiled it. If you have Disney Plus, they show Darth Vader right on the freaking thumbnail, so obviously he's gonna show up. But even before he shows up, they have the voice and the music themes, like really really subtle things like that. And it's like any other sci-fi series, you got the references. So again, Rainbow aside, I think just because the importance of Darth Vader as a character, I think they did a really good job showing, the final, the turning point when he went from Anakin to Vader, and also how that affected others. I mean, Obi-Wan, that was hard. Poor Obi-Wan got the short end of the stick. His master dies, his Padawan dies, and let's see how it affected him. I mean, Ewan McGregor, fantastic acting.
So my top two, I mean, we're ranking them, but they're really, my top two are basically my top one.
They're like a package.
Yeah, for me at least. So
same with mine.
I think we have very different ones. So my top two, and again, I have to rank them for the sake of this podcast, but really these are in the same order. My top two is episode 5, and then episode 6 was my favorite. So Empire Strikes Back, and then Return of the Jedi. So what are your top two before we go into
my top number 2 was New Hope, and number 1 was Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, so we're pretty close on these. Why don't you go into A New Hope first, and then we'll talk about episode 5, and then we'll end it with me talking about episode 6.
I put New Hope so high because, again, kind of why I ranked episode 3 so high, with the establishment of Darth Vader's backstory. I mean, New Hope, it just started it all. I mean, people had never seen anything like this before on the big screen, and it was dealing with crazy stuff. I mean, like war and battles and stuff like that, but done in not a self-aware way, but it didn't take itself too seriously, and I think that just set the tone for most of the franchise from there on. The effects and establishing the characters.
Yeah. So we'll go into episode 5, because so episode 5 is your favorite, and then my second favorite is episode 5. So episode 5 is just, it's just, I don't know how to describe it other than it's just phenomenal. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, you think of something from Star Wars, it's probably from episode 5.
Yeah, there's so many iconic things, and I also think after they set up A New Hope, they set it up very well. And then this movie, it's just taking all of that. Luke is now learning how to be a Jedi. He goes it's so iconic when he goes and meets Yoda, and then Han and Leia are doing stuff together, and at the end you think Han dies. It's just, I feel there's a lot of twists and turns in that movie, and it's very fast paced, and it just keeps going.
Yep.
And it just holds your attention the whole time. So what about you?
That's why I put it so high, because it took everything from A New Hope and just they had their footing under them. They had the characters and the universe established, and they just took off running with it. Everything was just amped up. And again, the story got a bit more complicated, which they could, and it just was way more interesting. They could really, we know who these characters are. Now, what are they doing? What are their motivations? What are they going to do in these crazy situations they put them in?
And then I put episode 6 as my top favorite. So Return of the Jedi is my top favorite, because I just think there's a couple scenes in that movie that are my favorite scenes of all time in Star Wars, and the one would be when they're fighting outside of Jabba's ship that's in the desert, and then Boba falls into the Sarlacc pit. I love that scene. I just love how they work together, and then I love how Princess Leia kills Jabba the Hutt. Iconic. And then I also just love how Luke is just from he makes such a dramatic change throughout the whole series, but it's not in a way that's oh, why is he like this? Kind of how I feel with the prequels. It's very jarring, episode 2 through episode 3 with Anakin, but I feel Luke, his transition into this well-established Jedi is very gradual and makes sense. And I just love that opening scene where he opens up the doors and he's wearing the all black robes, and it's just the presence of him and the way he holds the lightsaber and conducts himself. You're oh, he did some serious training after Yoda. That changed him, and I just love that transition. And then my other favorite scenes are the speeder chase in Endor. That's one of my
Classic,
favorite scenes.
yeah.
I don't know if you can tell, but I have a Funko Pop. You know what? Let me get it real quick. Yes, actually have a Funko Pop of Princess Leia on the speeder from this episode because it's like one of my absolute favorites. And then this costume that she's wearing, her little Endor outfit, is my favorite costume in all of Star Wars. And I have been trying to find a cosplay of this for a very long time, and I can't find it anywhere, so I will probably at some point in my life I would like to make this costume because this is my absolute favorite costume in all of Star Wars. And then I love the Ewoks. Like, I'm sorry, I love them. I know people think they're like annoying and stuff, but I absolutely adore them. I'm gonna put her up here because Lothcat's trying to eat her. I just love the Ewoks. And then I really love the ending when Luke goes to Darth Vader and they fight against Emperor Palpatine, and then it just sort of ends, like the series ends with like Darth Vader sort of like just being like, you know, apologizing to him, and like he kind of redeems himself in the end. And I think because of those scenes that I love, that's why I put it as my number one spot. So yeah, that was our ranking. So let's just go over one more time. So my least favorite movie was The Clone Wars, and I believe that was your least favorite. And my favorite was Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And your favorite was? Empire Strikes Back. And then my least favorite show was Andor.
I will not say Tales of the Jedi because that wasn't on your list, but I hate to say it again, Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan was your least favorite. And then my favorite and his favorite as well was The Mandalorian as a TV show. So that is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed hearing about our rankings. I hope you learned a little bit more about Star Wars. And like always, stay safe, stay classy, and we'll chat again with you soon. Bye.
Bye.